Peace, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be an amazing episode. So, in case you didn't know, my wife is actually related to the enslaved descendants of Thomas Jefferson. So, in this episode, we actually go to Monticello, you know, the place on the back of the nickel, to take part in this project known as the Getting Word Project. And I also had some questions myself about Jefferson's views on religious freedom, as well as Islam's role in the establishment of the laws of the United States. So we're going to start off with that, and then we're going to branch off into Bashira's history. Stay tuned. This episode's going to be great. See you in a bit.
John Ragasta with the International Center for Jefferson Studies.
Wonderful. Now, what is your area of expertise?
Well, I do early American history, especially, however, religious freedom, and the history of religious freedom in America, how we get religious freedom in America. And I do mostly history, law. I have a background in law, and some religion.
So I remember, when we were up by Jefferson's library, we spoke about the idea of Jefferson and having a very broad kind of scope when it comes to religious freedom.
Sure. I mean, Jefferson and Madison, he's talking a lot with James Madison about this, understand that as the country is coming together, America is going to be a country of very diverse people. We already, at that time, we have Germans, we have people from France, we have people from England, we have people, and he's not necessarily thinking about the enslaved community, but what he says then has great relevance to people. So he understands for this country to operate, we can't have the kinds of wars they had in Europe. So Jefferson says, in America, everybody gets a religious freedom. The Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan, the Hindu and the infidel of every denomination. Wow. And I find this fascinating. I mean, first of all, we have Muslims in the country at that time, although mostly in the enslaved community, not clear that's who Jefferson is thinking. But when he talks about Hindus, he's looking ahead. I mean, he's saying that people are going to come to America and they have to have religious freedom.
There's a book out, and it's called Thomas Jefferson's Qur'an.
I have talked to people a lot about Jefferson's Qur'an. He buys, it's important to understand, he buys that Qur'an. We have records. We know when and where he buys that Qur'an. He buys it in 1765. He's in Williamsburg. He's studying law under George Wythe, one of the great legal scholars of the 18th century. And that particular edition of the Qur'an includes a lengthy introduction about Sharia. And so he's studying comparative law, he's studying comparative religion.
Do you think that would pose any, not evidence, but make someone infer that he was utilizing bits of the Quran or bits of Jewish law and all of that to integrate into the American legal system?
Well, to some extent, I think that's right. People have been criticized, myself and other historians. Jefferson, when he's president, has the first, what's the meal to break Ramadan?
Iftar.
He has an iftar, and he has an iftar in the White House. What happened was there was an Algerian ambassador, and it was Ramadan, and so the Algerian ambassador was obviously observing Ramadan, and there was a White House dinner that evening, and the ambassador was invited, so Jefferson intentionally delays the meal until after sundown to honor this man's religion and his religious practices. So Jefferson had an iftar in the White House. So you can say that was a religious experience, you can say that was a legal experience. He's honoring the fact that in America we have people of multi-ethnicities, multi-religions, multi-races, and that it doesn't matter in America.
Wow, that was awesome. I never heard this history before, especially not in the mainstream. But because this trip was more centered around the descendants of the enslaved community of Thomas Jefferson, I was limited in the amount of people that I could interview. But I did run into someone by the name of Barbara Devine, who was a researcher and a tour guide at Monticello, who gave me some resources about Jefferson's Qur'an, and I'll put those in the description. Now, moving on to Bashira's portion of the story.
Monticello is a special site, and I'm really fortunate but also grateful to have this experience as a part of my own personal history, because it's a place to really unravel the intricacies of our world. And I have a place where I can visit that my ancestors lived, hundreds of years ago, and it's a great place to unpack any emotions that I may have about that.
So, I mean, like, what kind of restorative justice goes on here? I mean, because you're a board member of the
Enslaved communities of Monticello.
Yeah.
We just built a contemplation site commemorating the 600 and some enslaved people, including our family, so that people can unpack the aspect of this experience that relates to slavery. In a way, that's a form of restorative justice, not just for us as descendants of people enslaved at Monticello, but for all people who are descendants of enslaved people throughout this country and throughout the world. So I think that the work that Monticello is doing is a form of, whether it's physical or spiritual, I think that it's good work. And it's connecting us all to our history and our ancestors. My ancestor actually lived and worked here. This is the nailery. Moses Tourette was, by profession, a nail worker. He worked on iron.
How do you feel about visiting your first known plantation?
It doesn't feel good at all. You could feel a range of emotions. I don't know, like, this is the type of stuff that you only see in movies.
What about the fact that your daughter's ancestors will have literally worked these fields?
Yeah, like, that's crazy. Like, I can't even articulate the words. It's like anger in the knowing that without all of this stuff, this country wouldn't even be here.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you go again with the paradox of liberty. What established the United States is it's not just black or white, it's black and white.
Mm-hmm. And gray.
And gray. Especially gray. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وأعوذ برب الناس مالك الناس إله الناس من شر وسوسة الناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
I don't know too much about this site until recently. They did an excavation and found a lot of bones. It was a part of the parking lot, but since then they've actually did a giant project reconstructing the burial ground, and they created a specific area for descendants to mourn their ancestors or do ceremonies, whatever it is that they want to do.
All in all, this trip was amazing. The good and the bad, the ups and the downs. None of this would be here if it weren't for them. And at the end, the Getting Word Project had a cookout for all of the descendants of the enslaved laborers of Thomas Jefferson in commemoration of the 30-year anniversary, as well as in celebration of Juneteenth.